Yep, we're good, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members of the public, for your patience with us as we conducted our private session. We are back now in public session. The meeting is called to order again. I welcome, as a first order of business, two representatives of the University Senate. John Oliver, returning from last year and who is under the weather and not able to participate today, as I understand it. Wish you well, John. We welcome also Professor Troy Shinbrot from the School of Engineering, who will serve as the second Senate representative to the board for this year. We welcome both of you and the continued collaboration between the board and the University Senate. I would turn now to a very important part of the meeting, the induction of members, two new members and one returning member to the Board of Governors. They are Dr. Jim Doherty and Amy Towers, both of whom are new to the board this year, and Bill Tambusi, who is serving a second term. I would like to ask University Senior Vice President and General Counsel and former Attorney General of the state of New Jersey, Mr. John Hoffman, to administer the oath of allegiance and office.
Thanks, Mark. Just a couple of housekeeping matters. Folks, I'm going to ask you to state your name, your name. I'm going to ask you either swear or affirm you choose. And again, I'm going to say, so help me God, that's your preference to repeat that or not. I'm hearing a lot of feedback. I don't know if anybody else is. So if anybody can mute your phone other than myself and Jim and Bill and Amy, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, folks, you ready? I state your name.
I, William Henderson,
do solemnly swear or affirm
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the
Constitution of the United States
The Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and
and
the
the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
bear
that I will
true faith
faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established in
and to the government
governments established in
the United States and in this state,
the United States and in the state,
under the authority of the people,
under the authority of the people,
and that I will faithfully, impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
perform
all the duties of the office
all the duties of
the office
of member of the Board of Governors of Rutgers,
of
member of the Board of
Governors of
the State University of New Jersey,
the State University of New Jersey,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
My God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, and Bill, welcome back.
Thank you.
And new board members, Amy and Jim, formally welcome aboard. We have a very full agenda today for the benefit of non-board members. Please know that we will transact our business in the following order. We will now have committee reports from all of the committees, including Finance and Facilities. We will not vote on any matters until the very end of the meeting. After we have the committee reports and the report from Mike Gower and the report from the University Senate, if we have time for it, we will then turn to the public comments, and then we will vote and adjourn. So without further ado, Jonathan Holloway, President of Rutgers University, welcome, and would you address us, please?
Thank you. Could you just doing an audio check that you can hear me? I can have a thumbs up. Beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to address my first meeting of the Board of Governors in the public setting. In the interest of time, I will err on the side of brevity. First, a few notes about our continuing response to COVID-19. Chancellors will be communicating about spring 2021 plans in the coming days, perhaps as early as the end of this week. We are working toward having a larger percentage of students living on campus for the spring, and more courses being offered in person, always being cognizant of public health realities. Our return to offices and other spaces will be slow and deliberate. There is a mandatory app to remind everyone that we all have a responsibility in this process. That's a daily check-in before we come to campus. The telecommuting policy was extended to December 31st last month. This will be an area of continuing conversation as we go forward. Yesterday, we had the honor of having White House Coronavirus Task Force member, Ambassador Dr. Deborah Birx. She is part of on-the-ground tour of the country. She has logged 16,000 miles in a car over the last 5 months, visiting college campuses. Tony Calcato did an excellent job bringing together a meeting that was held outdoors with the governor in attendance, First Lady in attendance, and other senior people from his team. And we met for about 3 hours with members of the New Jersey administration, the Rutgers New Brunswick administration, as well as leaders from the city of New Brunswick, to talk out loud about the situations with universities as relates to the COVID positivity rates. As I think all of you know, we have been doing an exceptional job in terms of the positivity rate for those relatively small numbers, I confess, of people living on campus. But the problems with our off-campus community, the positivity rate is much higher than it should be. And we are now boots on the ground, very aggressively trying to find ways to help educate again the population, especially those folks who feel the immortality of being 20 years old and that they are not part of this problem, and we want to get them to be part of the solution. And before I forget, thanks too to Pete McDonough and his team for pulling together all kinds of logistics to make yesterday's meeting such a success. On September 25th, I had my first address to the University Senate, my first opportunity to engage the Rutgers community live. Senate President John Oliver did an exceptional job managing that meeting, and I'm grateful to him, as I've already expressed privately, for his support in the process. During that address, I outlined 3 value propositions that will inform my efforts as president: the ideal of Rutgers as a beloved community, the relentless pursuit of academic excellence, and the need for strategic institutional clarity. And I'll touch on them briefly today, really quite briefly. The idea of a beloved community, I want to emphasize, is not one in which everybody always agrees. To me, a beloved community at a university is about supporting a true marketplace of ideas and opinions, with the need, often an uncomfortable one, to listen to others you may deeply disagree with. It is the only way to battle test ideas and to make sure the best ideas win out. In that act of authentic listening and acknowledgement that both sides of the disagreement belong to the same community is critical, and that both sides of a disagreement have the obligation to take care of it. This is what I think the beloved community is all about. Part of that beloved community is about recognizing the fact that excellence can be found everywhere, and that we need to be part of an aggressive effort to find that excellence in very intentional ways, especially in those places that have historically been overlooked. This means being intentional about seeking a diverse and inclusive community. This philosophy, for lack of a better phrase, I wanted to make much more pragmatic. And so this summer, we conducted the first internal equity audit of the central administration, with the point of which was to take stock of where we are, to identify areas where we need to improve, and to start the process of articulating what appropriate next steps need to be taken in order to become the national leader on this topic. As part of that process, I appointed Anna Branch, who was the Vice Chancellor of Diversity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement on the New Brunswick campus. I appointed her to be our inaugural Senior Vice President for Equity, a position from which she'll be charged with developing and implementing a strategy for diversity, equity, and inclusion that embraces diversity as a core institutional value, formulating strategic university goals, and ensuring the coordination of priorities across central administrative offices and chancellor-led units. I also, on the same theme of the beloved community, want to change the fraught nature of labor management relationships, the labor managed relationship as it has existed at Rutgers, and I want to see if we might establish a new way forward from the standpoint of collaboration. As I said in my university address, management must listen to labor, and vice versa must be the case as well. I have heard that there have been some positive changes in this regard on both sides of the table in the last couple of months, for which I'm grateful to everybody who's been part of that change. But more work is ahead of us, of course. We know we will not agree on everything, but I hope that we will understand that we share more in common than not. The second theme of my address was about academic excellence at Rutgers and the acknowledgement, which is very frustrating to me, that we punch below our weight. This is an exceptional research university, and too often I think it's the fact of its excellence, its reputation, lags behind the fact of its excellence. One of my key jobs, therefore, is to help my peer presidents and provosts realize Rutgers is a major player that they should respect. I start this work by recentering the academy within the university. I want to create faculty bridges between the chancellor-led units to better position us to amplify the already excellent work of our faculty and move our reputational indicators. As part of that work, I returned the rank of Chief Academic Officer to the level of Executive Vice President. It had been at that rank years earlier, and it's important to me that it be returned to that rank. The Chief Academic Officer is the #2 person at the university in rank and should have that title as well. To that extent, I'm excited to have Prabhas Mogi as the new Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs. He and I intend to be more focused on recruiting and retaining leading scholars, in part by securing resources to develop intercampus exchanges through new academic initiatives, some coming through the Big Ideas process, part of our fundraising, our future fundraising campaign. One very big idea is the creation of the new Institute for the Study of Global Racial Justice. This was funded by a $15 million 5-year grant from the Mellon Foundation, with centers in Camden, Newark, New Brunswick, and with RBHS involvement. The head of the Institute is the founding director of the Institute is Michelle Stevens, who is also Dean of Humanities, well, until this moment, is Dean of Humanities in New Brunswick, and a leading scholar in this particular area. This institute will fuel and amplify the scholarship of researchers in the humanities or who use humanistic methods, and whose work touches areas such as policy reform, K-12 education, social justice work, and the carceral state. This is an example of the humanities not being, I put in quotes, art for art's sake, but being about much more substantive issues in terms of material consequences on the daily life for the citizens of New Jersey, the nation, and the world. This grant allows us to recruit more emerging and top scholars who work in these areas. It will help us retain our top young talent and fund postdoctoral fellowships as an early look at the next generation of academic leaders on these critical topics. The last item from my Synod address was the need to achieve strategic clarity if Rutgers is to move forward in all the ways that I want it to do. We are now so complex as an institution that it makes it difficult to tell a concise and effective story about the university to alumni, legislators, donors, investors, foundations, and businesses. And this, as you know, is one of my most important jobs, being the chief storyteller, if you will, for the university. To help me in that regard, I've created a new position, Senior Vice President for Strategy, filled by Brian Ballantyne, formerly my Chief of Staff, and the person responsible for my transition from Northwestern to Rutgers in terms of helping me understand the university as it is and what it might become. I've created this office as a 4-year pilot project. The office will have a small team that will push forward projects that will bring coherence to university strategy and will strengthen the university's position in New Jersey and in the national landscape of higher education. As I said, it will be a small team that will reach out on discrete and time-limited projects, leaning on our faculty and staff wherever the project makes relevant sense. So this is about tapping into our own expertise about how we can bring greater clarity to who we are and how we are. The first major project for the Office of Strategy is a review of the university's budget model, the RCM budget model established in fiscal year 2016. I want to be clear, this review is not a referendum per se on RCM, but is a promise fulfilled that was made in 2016 that we would begin a review of the RCM to see if there are ways that it is not aligned with our university values and strategic direction. If it's not aligned, that we will find ways to make adjustments going forward. Brian Ballantyne recently presented a preliminary structure and plan to me and other executive vice presidents, and invitations to serve on this review will be going out, I believe, in the next week or two. So we're going to get things rolling on that front very quickly. The Office of Strategy will also be looking at the so-called enrollment cliff that was demographers was saying is 5 or 10 years in the future, but it's been sped up and we are now looking at it right now. The team will also be looking on how we can best position Rutgers for success in a post-COVID landscape, and will help me develop a strategy for how Rutgers defines and communicates its value. These elements, when we bring greater clarity to how we articulate what Rutgers is and how we can realize our ambitions, I think will do quite a bit to help facilitate our efforts to enhance the university's academic reputation, and so it'll be elevated to its proper place in the landscape of public major research universities. Those are my comments. Thank you very much. Now, I'm new here. I'm assuming someone else has the ball, and they may be muted.
Mark, are you there?
Mark is coming on. He was booted, so I'm bringing him back on as a panelist. I apologize, everybody.
While he is coming on, may I take the prerogative of moving on the agenda towards the report of the interim Rutgers University Candidate Chancellor?
I'm back. I'm back with hearty apologies. Dr. Holloway, thank you. Dr. Marsh, we will be with you in 30 seconds. I remark only that this is our last WebEx meeting ever. We will be using another technology next time. Somebody should give Michelle Noren a heads up about that. Onward, Dr. Marsh, thank you for agreeing to serve as Chancellor in Camden this year. Your reputation preceded you to all of us, and very favorably so, and you're obviously off to a splendid start. We apologize for not coming to your campus today in person. We look forward to doing that in due course, and in the meantime, please address us and welcome.
Thanks so much, Mark, and thanks to all of you for letting me have some time to give this report, even though we're not in Camden. Well, I am, but you aren't. I've given you a written report, so in these remarks, I just want to do two things. I want to let you know quickly how things are going for us during the pandemic semester, and then I want to talk to you briefly about two campus initiatives that we're working on this year. In terms of the pandemic, I want to start out by praising the faculty. They've done an amazing job under very difficult circumstances. And one of the things they've done, just one, I'm only going to tell you one, is they've created something called communities of practice. That's where they share ideas about how to keep students engaged in this new educational world. It's been going very well. The students are working really hard too. But it is very clear from surveys we've done that many of them are not happy with remote learning. They really miss interacting with their peers in person, and some of them are finding it more difficult to to be able to engage deeply in their coursework. We're doing a range of things to help. The deans and the department chairs divided large classes into smaller sections so that students can have more personal interaction and have their issues addressed more carefully and closely. And our student-facing offices are connecting students with the services they need, but it's tough. The students miss being on campus, they miss being in class, and we're all looking forward to the time when this happens again. So these are some of the things we're doing right this minute because our most immediate needs are to make sure that the students remain on track with their educations and that the faculty can teach effectively and they can make progress in their research. But, you know, as we deal with the president, not the president, sorry, as we deal with the present, we also know that the future won't wait for us. Jonathan talked to you about the future, and we all have to be thinking about what's next. At Rutgers Camden, we have a range of new initiatives, and today I just want to mention two of them. As most of you know, in terms of PhD education, our programs have all been developed in the 21st century. We are the newest of your campuses in terms of PhD education, and all of them are deliberately designed to cross disciplinary boundaries. What I would say if I was a business person is that in doctoral education, breaking down disciplinary silos is what we might call our brand. And so, building on these characteristics, we are in the very early stages of developing a new PhD program. We're taking advantage of the synergies among arts and sciences, nursing, and the business schools. We're fortunate to have them all together under one chancellor, which really facilitates the integration of the programmatic endeavor. There's going to be more to come as the year unfolds, and these programs, which are relatively new, go by different names, but here's the broad idea. The new program will take the well-being of communities in their broadest perspectives, and it's going to focus on the design, implementation, and assessment of interventions to improve the welfare of individuals and their communities. The distinctive elements of the program will include a focus on implementing change, on methods that illuminate causal mechanisms. We're not talking about correlations here, but causality, and careful assessment of efficacy. We have a lot of strengths on this campus to make this program happen, and I will keep you informed of our progress. A second priority is to advance the commitment of the Rutgers-Camden community to our core values of equity, excellence, diversity, and inclusion. Research activities and faculty recruitment and retention are all among the priorities we're pursuing, but I want to talk to you about something different. Because I'm a historian, I'm also really interested in the ways in which the past intersects with the present. To that end, I have created a committee on public art and history. And one of its tasks is to advise on ways in which Rutgers-Camden can create in our physical environment a representation of the past lives of our campus that embodies diversity and inclusivity in the history of the land on which Rutgers-Camden sits. Ways to accomplish this goal include public art, historical markers, other physical representations, exhibits, walking tours. I'm even thinking about living history maybe. I'm really excited about the possibilities here, and I plan to devote some of my fundraising energies this year in seeking grants and individual support to make this vision a reality. There'll be more to come in the next few months. I'll look forward to updating you, and thanks so much.
Dr. Marsh, thank you very much for that splendid set of remarks. And without further ado, we're going to turn to the Committee on Academic and Student Affairs. Mr. Hundley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Academic and, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. The Committee on Academic and Student Affairs met on September 10th. The meeting was called to order at 9 a.m. We started the committee meeting with a review of the committee charge. The committee did review the BOG's current charge to the Committee on Academic and Student Affairs. That is reviewed annually at the first meeting of the academic year. Following that, we have reports on the 2019-2020 new faculty appointments and faculty appointment promotions and reappointments to and within the tenured ranks. Dr. Richard Edwards, the interim senior vice president for academic affairs, explained that the university goes through a cycle to hire, evaluate, promote, and tenure faculty, which traditionally begins each fall when the committee receives reports on new faculty hires and decisions on candidates considered internally for appointments, reappointments, and promotions during the previous academic year. He then reviewed those reports with the committee. Following that, Rutgers University Newark Chancellor Nancy Cantor informed the committee about new Rutgers Stackable Business Innovation Program that the Rutgers Business School will be offering 6 standalone graduate certificates in accounting and information systems, finance and economics, management and global business, management science and information systems, marketing, and supply chain management. After that, we moved on to Dr. Brian Strom, Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences Chancellor and Executive Vice President for Health Affairs, who reported that the School of Health Professions offers the Master of Science in Clinical Nutrition as a 42-credit degree program. Rutgers New Brunswick Chancellor Chris Malloy then stated that through collaboration, Newark and New Brunswick will be offering a Master of Social Work, Master of Arts in Criminal Justice dual degree program through the School of Social Work and the School of Criminal Justice. The committee then moved into executive session to discuss personnel matters, including a faculty tenure appointment recommendation and an appointment to the Helen E. Cheney Chair in Alcohol Studies. The committee agreed to endorse both items for board approval, and they have been placed in today's consent agenda. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report on the Committee on Academic and Student Affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hundley. Ms. Taylor, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Audit met on Monday, September 14th from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. After introductions, assessment of any conflicts of interest, and review of the committee charge, the following matters were presented for information. Mr. J. Michael Gower, Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and University Treasurer, provided a progress report of current cornerstone projects and related project budgets. He followed with an update on the financial impact of COVID-19, and Mr. Ernie DeSandro, University Controller, provided a status update on the financial statement audit. Then we heard from Dr. Timothy J. Fournier, Senior Vice President, Risk Management. He gave the committee an overview of the scope of the audit and compliance functions under his purview and discussed some current regulatory changes impacting the university. He also presented the committee with the University Ethics and Compliance Charter for approval, which was approved by the committee. Mr. Eugene Simon, Associate Vice President, discussed the investigative groups within UEC and discussed metrics associated with the University Ethics Hotline. Ms. Ruth Philo, Chief Audit Executive, presented her fiscal 2020 year-end report for the Audit and Advisory Services Group. She presented information on 3 completed projects issued since last meeting, as well as the progress of work with management to close out the past 2 recommendations. Following the reports, the committee met in executive session with University Ethics and Compliance and General Counsel. Mr. Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. Ms. Towers, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Health Affairs met on Tuesday, September 15th. We began the meeting with Dr. Frank Ganassi, President and Chief Executive Officer of University Behavioral Healthcare and University Correctional Healthcare, who cited 4 matters that required the committee's endorsement to move forward to the Board of Governors. These will be presented under the consent agenda today. Those 4 items were the minutes of the University Behavioral Healthcare leadership meetings of April, May, June, and July, the proposed University Behavioral Healthcare staff appointments and reappointments of May, June, July, and August, as well as the University Behavioral Healthcare's quality improvement reports for both the 4th quarter of 2019 and the 1st quarter of 2020. The committee then heard further from Dr. Ganassi, providing an overview of the UBHC and discussed the reopening of ambulatory services after closing due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as various other topics. We then moved on to the Chancellor's report given by Dr. Brian Strom, who provided a comprehensive report on activities, then reviewed the RBHS Diversity Council, as well as reviewing the terms of the Master Affiliation Agreement with RWJ Barnabas. Then discussed, as Dr. Ganassi did, our response to the COVID-19 and plans to repopulate the campus. We then heard a financial report from Ms. Bromwell, the Senior Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration. Ms. Bromwell provided an overview of FY20 preliminary financial results as compared with F19 actual results, and again, further revisions to the FY20 budget. She highlighted trends and significant variances. Ms. Bromwell then presented the proposed resolution approving the revisions to the affiliation agreement with RWJ Barnabas Health, which was unanimously endorsed by the committee and will move forward under the consent agenda as well today. Lastly, we received a clinical update from Dr. Gracias, the Senior Vice Chancellor for Clinical Affairs at RBHS, as well as the Vice President for Health Affairs, giving us a clinical update discussing the university's response to COVID-19, as well as an update on the Medical Cannabis Working Group and the university's planning around the upcoming influenza season. Lastly, he discussed the accreditation process and the current status of the graduate medical education program and an update on Rutgers Health Group. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Towers, thank you very much. Mr. Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everybody. The Committee on Intercollegiate Athletics met on September 15th at 1 o'clock for 2 hours. We started out with the committee members reviewing and confirming the committee charge. President Holloway then addressed the outlook for the fall sports season and reviewed the events that led up to its current status. Mr. Pat Hobbs, Athletic Director for the Division of Athletics for Rutgers, New Brunswick, provided a general athletics update. He spoke about the mental and physical health of the student athletes and highlighted the importance of the university's relationship with RWJ Barnabas. He then discussed the work of Dr. Joshua Burchard, the Chief Medical Officer for the Division of Intercollegiate Athletics, and the protocols and testing put in place to protect student athletes. Dr. Burchard provided a medical update to the committee and discussed the planning process that he organized to help student athletes return to campus safely. He reviewed the Back to the Banks plan and walked the committee through each element of the plan. Mr. Matthew Pardoff, Senior Associate Athletic Director and Chief Compliance Officer, provided a compliance update and highlighted the dynamic challenges to compliance presented by the COVID-19 pandemic. He then provided a general overview of compliance issues throughout the NCAA and their implications for the university. Ms. Sarah Baumgartner, Deputy Director of Athletics, provided an update on the Tickets to Success program, a campaign initiated in response to the financial impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Then Mr. Mike Zuhl, Senior Associate Athletic Director for Finance, Administration and Planning, provided an overview of the division's fiscal year 2020 budget, and the meeting adjourned on time at 3 p.m. Mr. Chairman, we also met as a Committee on Intercollegiate Athletics yesterday for 1 hour from 2 to 3. Dr. Tom Stevens, Faculty Athletics Rep, provided an overview of his role as the NCAA faculty representative. Mr. Pat Hobbs, athletic director for the Division of Athletics for Rutgers, New Brunswick, provided a general overall athletics update. He discussed the reinstatement of the football season and highlighted the protocols in place to protect student athletes. And he too also reviewed the Tickets to Success campaign and gave us an update. Dr. Bouchard, Chief Medical Officer for the Division of Intercollegiate Athletics, provided a medical update and explained how rapid testing of student athletes would work, and further elaborated on the protocols that will be put in place as the football season moves forward. Mr. Mike Zuhl, Senior Associate Athletic Director for Finance Administration and Planning, provided an update on the division's budget. Again, Mr. Matthew Pardarf, Senior Associate Athletic Director and Chief Compliance Officer, provided a compliance update and discussed current NCAA conversations around student athletes' ability to transfer, as well as eligibility considerations for winter and spring sports. And the meeting was adjourned on time at approximately 3 p.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Banks, I'm gonna stick in a couple of other reports before you, and then have you go immediately prior to the comments and questions from the public. So, Mr. Gower, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Joint Committee on Investments has met twice since the board last met. On June 17th, it met. Chief Investment Officer Jason McDonald reviewed with the committee the annual review of the investment policy statement, and also reviewed proposed changes to the portfolio's asset allocations, perhaps the most important role of the committee. Those changes were endorsed. Mr. McDonald also recommended a number of rebalancing of investments amongst 5 new funds and 3 existing ones of rebalancing the portfolio. And the committee endorsed those, as well as adding 3 new investment managers. Ms. McDonald reviewed the investment activity for the entire year at that time, as well as longer-term opportunities and the pipeline of investments for fiscal year 21. And there was a regular review of performance. The committee met again on September 16th. Chairman Talak Lal reviewed with the committee the calendar of activities for it and the responsibilities for the committee members. Ms. McDonald reviewed 3 manager recommendations, each of which was endorsed by the committee, as well as endorsing other rebalancing investments. Mr. McDonald reviewed the pipeline again. What are the things that are forthcoming to the committee, as well as the performance through June 30th. Preliminary performance showed that we were at about 0, which was good considering the volatility of the market for the year ending June 30th. But for 3-year and 5-year periods, it was 4.7% and 5.2% respectively. And then finally, there was a review of the investment office's annual letter that would go to endowment donors. As well, the committee discussed the actions that will take place in terms of reviewing the divestment request for fossil fuel this fall. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gower. Please, may we have, I see that, I see John Oliver. Hello, John. I have been told, but perhaps correctly, perhaps something has changed, that you're not going to be presenting today, and that we're going to put your report in the consent agenda. John, am I right about that? You want to shake your head?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. First of all, thank you for your kind welcome. I'm not feeling great today, so if you don't mind, I did submit my report in writing, if you wouldn't mind just keeping that in the minutes.
Not at all. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for that, and thank you also for contributing to the fact that we have 36 speakers lined up and that you bought us back some time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
A pleasure to see you. Mr. Banks, over to you, and right through your proposed resolution, please, and then we'll go into comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Finance and Facilities met on the 30th of September from 9 to 12. Associate Treasurer Adam Day presented technical amendments to the commercial paper program that will further align the language to those approved by the board in June of 2020. This resolution is included in the consent agenda. Mr. Gower presented a proposed resolution ratifying 2 single-source contracts, one with Zoom Video Communications, the second with Global Medical Supplies and Equipment. This resolution is included in the consent agenda as well. Ms. Kathy Bramwell, Senior Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administration for RBHS, presented for endorsement the proposed resolution approving revisions to the affiliation agreement with RWJ Barnabas Health, Inc. This will be reported by the chair of the Health Affairs Committee. The Committee on Finance and Facilities considered the proposed revisions to the university's working budget at its September 30th meeting. Mr. David Moore, Assistant Vice President, Financial Planning and Budgeting and Chief Budget Officer, presented the proposed resolution to approve the university's consolidated revised revenue budget of $4.32 billion and a revised expense budget of $4.45 billion for fiscal year 2021, and explained the key revenue and expense item changes from the original budget approved in June. I now ask Mr. Gower, Executive Vice President, Chief Financial Officer, and University Treasurer, and Mr. Moore to review the key points from the budget presentation. Mr. Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Good afternoon, everyone. Wanted to lay a little background information and then ask David Moore, our Chief Budget Officer, to go through the presentation. Back in March, when the health emergency was declared, we also started to address the impact financially on the university, which was dramatic. We received a in-year rescission of our appropriations from the state. That was a 50% of our operating appropriation for the last 4 months of the year. And in some cases, we had elimination of specific appropriations. We had the impact of the refunds that were appropriately given to students and their families for housing, dining, and parking, and other costs that were associated with the health emergency. At that time, we instituted a number of measures, including a hiring freeze, travel freeze, ban on non-essential discretionary purchases. We were also approximately in the middle, maybe a little past the middle of the preparation of the fiscal 21 budget, when we had to pivot to try to estimate the impact of COVID and how that would change the operations of the university and therefore the financial position for the budget. We were using knowledge and projections available to us in April and May, and we had some insights that we had available to us in early June. But I stress that point because it's hard to look back now and recognize how little we knew that we now know for sure. That budget, version 1.0, I called it, had significant operating deficit. We assumed a lower tuition and fees. We assumed lower state appropriation based on the actions of the administration, but also the general economy of the state. We assumed that there would be some lower housing and dining occupancies and expenditure reductions as well, but there were still many, many unknowns. I told this board at the time that there were so many unknowns that we would want to return to it now with the greater knowledge that was came available to us during the summer. And during the summer, we gained much greater clarity on a number of items, enrollment in particular, the impact on our international students from immigration limitations. We had positive information from the state regarding our appropriation, for which we are quite grateful, having a restoration of the cuts that were made to it in the first quarter of the year. However, I remind the board that we were not made whole for the cuts that were made in fiscal 20. We also came to understand how much and how we were allowed to use money that came from federal stimulus sources, in particular CARES Act. We gained a great deal of understanding on the impact of the emergency on how we conducted medicine, and therefore what the patient care revenues would be, and also what impact we had on occupancy for housing, dining, and athletics, insofar as would we be able to sell tickets for games. We also refined expenses. We looked at compensation moves that were available to us or that we were able to negotiate, including furloughs. We looked at the impact of salary deferrals that would be either negotiated or part of arbitration. We looked at building costs, what buildings could we save money on because they were being used less than normal year, exactly how the CARES funds would be devoted between things such as financial aid and support for remote learning and other student needs. We looked at the costs of testing for COVID, how that would impact us, as well as other elements to prepare the campus for ultimately reoccupancy. All of the pieces of the expense landscape, in other words. So the result is version 2.0, today presenting to you a better picture, but it's nowhere near a balanced budget yet. We do find that there are opportunities that we must take and initiatives we must take to make the bottom line better here without hurting the mission of the institution, but we are at least in a better position. And I'd like to now turn it over to Mr. Moore to go through the presentation. David?
David, you might be on mute.
David?
So Mike, having been a victim of what I think is maybe happening to David right now, which is that he's centrally muted because the system just does that. Again, this is our last WebEx meeting. Mike, do you have the presentation before you, or do you not?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. I can proceed with it.
If you would, please.
Till David can come on.
Yes, thank you. He can pick up when he rejoins, if he rejoins.
Pat, would you get the next page, please? So we want to give the general financial framework of how we look at either the budget in its 1.0 version or resetting it for this 2.0. We would take a look at all sources of revenues, philanthropy, tuition and fees, including enrollment and the mix of enrollment, in particular, that between in-state and out-of-state, new programs, adjustments to retention, ongoing transfers, and so on. Healthcare activities, which is a bigger and bigger proportion of our budget every year, as well as what ultimately would be done for the balance of the fiscal year from state appropriations. If you will recall, the state only appropriated for the first quarter of the year, July through September, in their session in June, and deferred action on October through June until just recently. And so that was an unknown that we had to work with our state relations folks who did a masterful job of scouring the halls of Trenton to get us information and understand where we would be. Likewise, on the expense side, we looked again at all the academic enterprises, the clinical enterprises, the administrative functions. In many of these, we initiated We initiated budget reductions. In a number of places, we eliminated positions that were open in order to achieve cost savings. We also, at the same time, looked at cost increases that were coming to us. For instance, those costs that were associated with preparing the buildings for a new type of occupancy and also supplies that would be needed for the COVID emergency. And also we looked at the debt service that was a required cost to us, one that we could not defer. All of these come into play as we look at operating and capital reserves, our capital infrastructure and fiscal plan in general. Pat, next page. This is an executive summary of the revised budget by its component units: New Brunswick, Newark, Camden, RBHS, and Central. If you recall, this is the way that we present the budget to you and discuss it, but also how it is supposed to be passed and then published to the public. Could you go to the next page, please? I'd like to focus on the revenues, and in particular, those things that have changed since the last time. This is important to note that we had a number of items that got better, but we also had a number of items that got worse. In student tuition and fees, we came on a $1.27 billion estimate, budget 1.0, and factoring in our real enrollment this fall, real impact of the mix of enrollment, as well as the impact of a very strong summer school, but reduction of tuition and fees, a 10% reduction that was done early on. We came within $7 million of that estimate. So some things up and some things down, but basically sideways in that regard. Line item 2 is federal and state student aid. Here you see the impact of dollars from the CARES Act in particular. Much of the CARES Act that came to us was devoted for student financial aid. In fact, the vast majority of it, student financial aid, student support costs, and support for technology. Only a small portion of the funds that have been allocated thus far were available to us for budget relief, for helping with the bottom line, in other words. In New Jersey state appropriations, here's where I note the restoration back to a pre-COVID normal level of support from the state, for which we are quite grateful. Back in the time we were discussing version 1.0, we went anywhere from a 100% reduction for the first quarter to what turned out to be a 60% reduction for New Brunswick and a 55% reduction for Newark and for Camden. All those have been restored, including the reductions for the first quarter, so that we are at full funding. But as I remind the committee, that did not include the rescissions that were made in fiscal 20. State paid fringe represents the area of support from the state for a certain number of our employees for their fringe benefit programs. That is basically an in and out figure with a fringe benefit expense below. Grants and contracts, a slight increase against our projection. Most of this is in the COVID research area. A small dip in gift and contribution revenue, endowment investment income on projections. The next item being very, very important, a significant reduction of our estimate for healthcare revenue. As Dr. Strom reminds me on a regular basis, medicine is practiced differently now. And if any of you have gone to the doctor recently as I have, you will see that. You cannot have as many people in the waiting room as you did before. You cannot have as many patients go through the clinic itself in a given day. Medicine is considerably less efficient, if you will, for patients to go through, given that the protections that are needed for those patients, the sanitization that is needed for clinic rooms, for procedure rooms, either in our own clinics or in our affiliated hospital partners. This is going to have an impact for a good while. It is the new normal. And we also have the great concern, as Dr. Strom has mentioned to me, that there are still many patients who are afraid to come to the clinic for fear of COVID. And that is unfortunate because they may not be getting the treatments that they need, but it is a reality that we are seeing. So that is an incredibly impactful change in this budget. Small change in affiliated and house staff, that's our relationships with other hospitals, be it the RWJ Barnabas healthcare system or the relationships we have for our graduate medical education interns and residents. The final item that is really impactful is auxiliary revenue. Contained in here are revenues for housing, dining, parking, athletic ticket sales, athletic conference distributions, all of which are dramatically down from our projections in the spring. As a case in point, we anticipated in the spring being able to occupy our residence halls up to 25% this fall. We're actually a shade based on a report that Tony published yesterday. We are actually at 8.93%, a very small number. And within New Brunswick, which has the largest stock of housing, we are actually at 5.37%. That is a dramatic reduction from our estimate. But again, at the time that we did this, we really didn't know what it would take to reoccupy residence halls. We also estimated that we might go as high as 75% in the spring, and that has been adjusted backwards. We anticipated some dining sales commensurate with those occupancies, and then that dramatically down. And finally, we anticipated that we would be able to have fans in the stands for football this fall, and we know at this point that that will not be available. So therefore, ticket sales will be zero. All in all, the ups and the downs of the revenues projected in the spring and now at a $6 million change. So as I call it, basically it went sideways during that time. Pat, would you go to the next? On the expense side, there was a great deal of work done. In particular, we looked at estimated savings that could come from furlough programs and salary deferrals for both our non-aligned personnel as well as our aligned personnel. Within the budget that you saw in June, the only thing that we had estimated out of the salary and wage line item was salary increases that have been scheduled for the non-aligned personnel starting in July. We've gone through with all the chief budget officers and the various school business officers and others, budget managers throughout the university, to estimate that the actions that we've been discussing in terms of salary deferral and furloughs could save $73 million in salary and wages and fringe benefit expense. And so that's a major factor relative to this budget. You will see an increase that's significant in scholarships and fellowships. This is a direct pass-through of dollars that came available to us up above in federal and state student aid from the CARES Act, and then a small increase across $4 million across almost $1 billion of all other operating expense. The bottom line of the bottom line is that after transfers, this budget went from an estimate in the spring of deficit after use of expected prior year net assets for specific strategic initiatives of about $154 million down to about 97. 97 is still a significant deficit, still a significant impact, but one that is considerably more manageable than the one we presented to you in the spring. We need to manage that number. We need to look for other opportunities to either enhance revenues or reduce expenses along the way without impacting the mission and critical operations. And we will continue to do so. Next page, please. This is a summary document across all of the units for the proposed 2.0 budget. Again, coming back down to that $97 million deficit and change in fund balance operations after the use of prior year net assets. Use of prior year net assets, those are sometimes referred to inaccurately as reserves. They are monies that are set aside in 1 year for particular activities and designated functions for a coming year. So the $31 million there are specifically identified against expenses up above particular one-time, not recurring, but one-time strategic initiatives. And this gives you a feel of impact across the various units of the university. Next page, please. So looking back to plan forward, we are continuing with the hiring freeze with appropriate exceptions for critical positions and faculty searches in certain areas. There's an exception process in place reviewed by the chancellors as we go along. There have been voluntary salary reductions in place and limits on salary increases, continued moratorium on discretionary spending that is not essential for programs or mission. Wherever possible, hibernation of buildings to limit spending. This is more rare now insofar as we have reoccupied many of the buildings for research. And so therefore, if you have even a few people in the building, those buildings are fully active. Pursuing HR actions, halting capital project planning, modeling the various scenarios for opening in the spring, which are incorporated into this. And then we have been addressing, as possible, concerns about classes and retention amongst our students, but also what we can do in the international realm, where we have significantly fewer that started. And when they started in other countries than we have had in the past. Finally, establishing FY21 savings targets so we can find a way to mitigate that bottom line even more. And I believe that ends the report.
Thank you, Mr. Gower. Obviously, a lot of information, but also very important information for everyone to understand. So thank you for that. Mr. Chair, I move the resolution for approval of the fiscal year 2020-2021 revised working budget as found on pages 81 and 82 of the meeting materials.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banks. Mr. Gower, the very finest quarterbacks in the event of a broken play hang on to the ball themselves and run it across the goal line. You just did that. Thank you, as always, for being.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we now will turn to comments from the public. We welcome these comments from the public because we have 36 folks who have signed up. We're going to have to, or we're going to be here all day. We're going to have to strictly enforce the rules. So if you are called and you're not on the line, you're not on the WebEx, you're not going to be called a second time, with my apologies. It's number one. Number two, if no one who signed up has the privilege of passing the baton to a substitute speaker. Number three, if you are not speaking to something on which we are about to vote, with my hearty apologies and no disrespect intended, I'm going to rule you out of order and you will be cut off. Finally, we will end the privilege of speaking at precisely 2 minutes, so use your time carefully. I have a list of names, Madam Secretary. Shall I start with the first one?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that'd be great.
Thank you very much. I call on, not quite yet, Dr. Liana Katz of our geography program. Ms. Katz, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for letting me have the time to speak. I'm a second-year PhD student in the geography program on the Rutgers New Brunswick campus, and I'm speaking in concerns to the pending fiscal emergency and about the necessity of extending 1 year of funding to all graduate students across our 3 campuses.
Ms. Katz, forgive me. Are you making remarks about something about which we are about to vote? And I would say, if not, hang on, because we will arrange another forum for speeches that are not on what we're about to vote. Are you going to speak specifically to anything on which we're about to vote?
I'm relating my personal experience to the fiscal status of the university, so I'm not sure if that qualifies, but that was my intention with my comments.
Okay. Please, would you preserve your comments? We will set up a forum for you to make them, I promise, and it will likely be in the month of November as opposed to right now. I would thank you for your indulgence in light of the time and the other number of speakers, and we will hear from you again in the not too distant future. Thank you, Ms. Katz, my apologies. Next, I would call on, forgive me, I'm not going to get the pronunciation right, Chioma Nwanayiri, a student, a senior in psychology and a writing tutor.
Hi, so I would like to speak on the potential relieving of the positions for the part-time lecturers of the writing program.
Okay, forgive me, are you going to speak on anything on which we are about to vote? If not, I would ask you to preserve your remarks. We're going to set up a special session so we can hear from you on this topic.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, very much. Thank you very much, and again, apologies for our time constraints. Ms. Sarah Browning, a student, MFA in our creative writing program in Camden. Ms. Browning, please.
Trying to get clarity, thank you, about what you're about to vote on. If it is the budget that includes hiring freezes, then I am speaking to that.
Mr. Gower, are you with us? Thank you for your question.
Yes, sorry, I had to get off mute.
No worries at all. Is the board approving hiring freezes as part of your resolution?
This budget does include the impact of hiring freezes. Yes.
Thank you very much. Ms. Browning, please continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I am a second-year student in the Master's in Fine Arts program in creative writing on the Camden campus. Due to the university's hiring freeze, part-time lecturers among my classmates were forced to wait until August to receive contracts for teaching this fall, making it hard for them to plan whether they could even enroll in the university this year. The hiring freeze has also resulted in a drastically reduced course offering, such that it's extremely difficult to find courses to meet our degree requirements. I urge the Board of Governors to end these austerity measures given the fairly sound financial health of the university and the financial reserves that exist. Additionally, I urge the board to take all the steps called for by the petition drafted by Rutgers Grads United and signed by over 500 graduate students. I emailed the text of that petition with these comments to the secretary earlier today. The petition calls on Rutgers University to extend funding and timelines for currently enrolled graduate students whose studies have been completely upended by the coronavirus and by the university's austerity measures. Please see my written comments for the text of the petition and a link to its home online where you can review the lengthy list of signatories from all 3 campuses and many departments. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your remarks, Ms. Browning. Thank you very much. Again, forgive me if I don't get the pronunciation right. Abid Haq, a PhD candidate, Federated Department of Biological Sciences at NJIT.
Hi, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm Abed, fifth-year student, biological sciences in Rutgers, Newark. I'm an international student and one of the thousands at Rutgers University. My legal status in the US is dependent on the availability of funding and teaching positions at the university. Without this funding, I can lose my legal status and potentially get deported.
Forgive me, Mr. Hawk.
Forced our labs to close down.
Mr. Hawk, forgive me. Are you going to address something on which we're about to vote? If not, I would ask you to preserve your comments, and we will give you a forum to speak.
I am going to comment on research and funding timelines. Is that something you're voting on?
I do not believe we are voting on research and funding timelines, and I would ask you to preserve your remarks. We're going to establish a special forum to hear from you on this.
Do you know when this forum will be?
I do not. We didn't know until very recently that we would have dozens and dozens and dozens of speakers today. I think that we likely will have it in November.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, my apologies for our time constraints. Jason Bohm, Administrative Coordinator at the School of Arts and Sciences, Newark Philosophy.
Yes, hi. I was wondering if I speak to agenda item 11 as it refers to any potential layoffs. Would that be in keeping with what you're voting on today?
Yes. I believe, Mr. Gower, that is in there, yes?
Yes, this budget does include some level of layoffs, reorganization, and otherwise.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Bohm, back to you, sir.
Thank you, sir. So I am Jason Bowman, Administrative Coordinator of the Newark campus. I am also a member of the URA AFT. I came here today not just to address the board, but to also address President Holloway, specifically as he is new and he may not understand the perspective of staff on the ground. I ask you, sir, what do words like equity, phrases like Black Lives Matter, or even U.S. history mean to you and to Rutgers as an institution? The fact is, the words and phrases I just mentioned appear not to mean much when the first to the chopping block are those who make the least of us, historically speaking. The layoffs URA have suffered have been overwhelmingly women and women of color. These layoffs severed these human beings from access to quality health care during a global pandemic. Not only that, these and future layoffs further impoverish a workforce that is already overworked and underpaid, overstressed, and underappreciated. The university claims to be considerate of working families, yet the level of stress we experience every day while trying to do our jobs and in most cases educate and care for our children has produced serious health issues for many, myself included. Instead of cutting the bloated salaries of our already overpopulated executive staff, instead of using COVID as an excuse to renegotiate poorly conceived contracts with outside vendors and the football team, the university has decided to instead use COVID as an excuse to start an initiative to restructure the university for the economic benefit of the top and to further corporatize public education.
Mr. Bohm, I'm sorry, you're out of order.
How am I out of order?
I believe so.
That's what y'all are doing. And instead of keeping
Kim,
families
would you terminate this speaker, please? Please, may we hear from Andres Morera, postdoctoral associate, School of Arts and Sciences, molecular biology and biochemistry, please.
Mr. Chair, give me one moment to find him on the list. It is not his fault. Okay, unmuted. Thank you.
Hello, hi. So I'm not sure that what I wanted to talk about is completely directly related to the question at hand, though I do have to say that it is sort of a time-sensitive thing. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at, postdoctoral associate in the Department of Molecular Biology and Biochemistry on the campus, and we in postdoc are working still without a collective contract and we've been doing so for 50 years.
Understood. Would you please, thank you, and with my apologies again, we will have a forum to hear your remarks, and we will do it in the month of November, sooner if we can. We would like to hear from you, but we're not voting on that today, as you know.
But if any of you guys pressure them to do stuff, thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much. Please, Alexandra Adams from the AAUP AFT Executive Council.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, I signed up to speak to point 11 because it made the most sense, but I'm not actually going to talk about what you're voting on today. I'm talking about the graduate student perspective.
Okay,
just to
is
clarify
great.
before I jump in.
That's great. Hold it. Okay, please would you preserve your remarks? We're going to have a session, likely in November, maybe later this month, to hear from you as you would like. But in the interest of good governance and time today, we're only going to hear from those who are speaking to precisely what we're voting on. So again, begging your indulgence, we look forward to hearing from you soon. Please now, Ms. Donna Murch, Associate Professor of History at the School of Arts and Sciences in New Brunswick.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Clearly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to speak to agenda item 11, which are layoffs. I'm very concerned about the proposed layoffs to the writing program, which affects our most vulnerable academic workers. This is even more problematic given the restoration in state funding of $100 million being added to our budget. And as a member of the AAUP AFT, it was remarkable to see our legislative committee successfully lobby for the restoration of our funding. So I want to speak to a question of priorities, that with this $100 million, it's important to also send a message to the New Jersey legislature that its money will be used to preserve people's jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Next, may we please hear from Ms. Leanne Cobb of the URA AFT.
One moment, Mr. Chair. I am searching for Ms. Cobb. I do not see that person on.
Thank you very much. Moving on, Ms. Harnell Richmond, please, Training Coordinator, University Finance Administration in the Project Management Office.
I do not see that individual either, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Please, Ms. Mariah Nestor Watt, Senior Administrative Assistant in the School of Arts and Sciences Office of Advising and Academic Services.
One moment, I am searching. Mr. Chair, I'm unmuting Mariah now.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
We can hear you clearly.
Thank you. My name is Mariah Nestor Watt, and I'm a member of the URA AFT. I'm speaking today regarding agenda item 11, the fiscal budget, layoffs, and furloughs. This spring, when the world turned upside down with the pandemic, Rutgers was forced to pivot and reimagine hundreds of years of the way things have always been done to meeting the needs of our community in ways no one could have foreseen. The staff members of President Holloway's beloved community stepped up in a big way and made these transitions possible. We used our personal phones to forward office calls to the increasing volume of inquiries from students and families. Staff became first-line responders for students, helping them find Wi-Fi zones in their town, referring them to resources for how to meet technology needs, and connecting them with the proper agencies to help address their food, housing, and mental health demands. My colleagues and I took on advising duties to help welcome in the SAS class of 2024 on top of my ever-growing admin responsibilities. Not because it was my job, but because it is what was needed, and I love my Rutgers home and want to see it continue to serve. Layoffs of our most vulnerable and the lifeblood of Rutgers goes against the very fabric of our university, particularly when so much funding has been reallocated back to the university. Layoffs also take direct swipes at those President Holloway and so many other departments at Rutgers say they hear, support, and will work to uplift through systematic changes. We did not turn our backs on you during this time. We took on and did more. Please do not turn your backs on us. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks, Ms. Nestor-Watt. Please, may I call on Mateo Laganes? Forgive me if I garbled your name.
It's okay.
Postdoctoral associate in the Center of Alcohol and Substance Abuse Studies.
Hi, I wish to withdraw my right to speak right now, but I would like to remind the Board of Governors that we need to talk about contracts for postdocs sooner or later. Thank you.
Yes, we will, and
sooner than later, please. Thank you.
Yes, we will do that. Thank you very much. Please, may I call on Stephen Patrick Schaefer from the Paul Robeson Library in Camden.
Give me one moment, Mr. Chair, searching for that individual. Unmuted. Thank you.
Mr. Schaefer, sir. Yes, we can. Thank you. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Governors. I'm asking to comment on the proposed budget, specifically, quote, pursuing HR actions in the presentation, in other words, layoffs. I am pretty new to Rutgers, just over 6 months now, so I don't presume to speak for every one of my colleagues in the university libraries and in other departments who are similarly affected by recent decisions. However, I can share my own experience, and hopefully by analogy, I think I can voice some version of our concerns. I was hired in mid-February after a long effort of trying to improve my job and career situation. I pulled up stakes and my wife and I drove across the country. I arrived at the Camden campus in late March, 1 week after everything was forced to shut down. It has been a challenging 6 months, but I have been grateful for the opportunity to pursue my own personal goals while contributing to an institution who I believe the effects ripple out into the community and the wider world. However, that brief opportunity is now at an end. The pandemic and subsequent economic turmoil has upended many plans and expectations. The current proposed budget, however, expects those upended plans to be passed down and paid for by upending the lives of individuals in the Rutgers community in the form of layoffs. The data the university is using to determine this budget is not incorrect, and viewed from the perspective of data and prevailing theories of management, the choices are not incomprehensible, vindictive, or even in all ways unreasonable. However, the data does not show how those decisions specifically complicate, put on hold, or even possibly ruin the plans and hopes and lives of the affected individuals. The university is asking members of the Rutgers community to sacrifice for the greater good of the university's position in the world, its reputation, and its future. However, I argue that the greater good, the position, reputation, and future is the Rutgers community, of which we are an integral part. In conclusion, I ask the Board of Governors to please reconsider your decisions and work with our unions to help find a more equitable solution than the one currently offered. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Thank you very much. Ms. Cynthia Salzman, please, of the Department of Sociology, Anthropology, and Criminal Justice in Camden.
Yes, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. More than once in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, when the country was hurtling towards almost depression-era unemployment, PTLs have confronted the threat and reality of massive layoffs at Rutgers. I realize that these are difficult times, but shifting the burden to the most vulnerable members of Rutgers community who play a vital role is neither fair nor sensible. It is cruel. Trying to save money by cutting PTL courses or laying part-time lecturers off is like, to use someone else's metaphor, Bill Gates looking for coins in the couch cushions. PTLs come from diverse backgrounds. They are self-supporting, Black, Latino, with children and single. All of us are now facing dire uncertainty. Many do not know if they can collect unemployment insurance, have health care, or if they can find another job. Rutgers is also getting terrible press. This will eventually affect enrollment, but it is already affecting our reputation. Some of the newspapers and periodicals that have mentioned that Rutgers is firing its adjunct faculty include the Washington Post, Politico, the Chronicles of Higher Education, several New Jersey newspapers, and the Daily Targum. Furthermore, 1,500 renowned and influential scholars at universities around the United States have signed a petition saying they will not speak or lecture at Rutgers because of the treatment and firing of adjunct faculty. As a member of the University Senate, I recently heard President Holloway speak about his desire to create a beloved community at Rutgers. People were so optimistic about his vision, and I remain excited about his presidency. I trust that under his helm and yours as a Board of Governors, you will re-envision the budget to be fairer and more equitable and preserve our jobs and salaries.
Thank you for your thoughtful remarks, Ms. Salzman. Alicia Picon Rodriguez, a Senior Administrative Assistant in New Brunswick.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can I be heard?
You can, clearly.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all, and thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Alicia Picconi, and I come to you today as a staff member, a current student, a graduate, a parent, and a true Scarlet Knight from a Rutgers family. I am also a member of URA AFT, speaking to item 11. I hope you are all well and safe. President Holloway speaks of a beloved community. Staff are a vital part of that community, involved in all aspects of the university, from faculty support to student services. We have a significant role in maintaining the excellent reputation Rutgers has throughout the state, the country, and the world. While much of our work is behind the scenes, faculty, students, and even parents can attest to their reliance on us to get things done. We are a big reason for Rutgers' pride. I maintain that employee layoffs are undue when we as union members have advocated to the state in order to provide the restoration to appropriations and funding. And we are all well aware of the great financial reserves and significant borrowing power that the university has. We realize that this is an unprecedented time and the economic environment right now is frightening, but layoffs affect the most vulnerable among us, putting many of us, some with long careers at the university, in a situation without income, health insurance, and/or tuition benefits. As New Jersey residents and New Jersey consumers, this has far-reaching economic implications. Throughout this crisis, we have diligently been working to do our jobs effectively, many from remote locations, and we have risen to the occasion to maintain the high level of service and education for which Rutgers is known. No one should be laid off. The layoffs that have been implemented should be rescinded, and no further layoffs should be implemented. We are Rutgers, the staff, the faculty, the students. We are the university. Rutgers should not be the reason people are devastated during a pandemic. Thank you for listening, and please stay safe.
Ms. Picconi, thank you very much. Alessandra Sperling, please, of the writing program in New Brunswick.
Alessandra, you're unmuted.
Hi, I'm sorry. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we hear you clearly. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members of the board. Thank you for letting me speak with you today. I will be speaking about the proposed budget and the potential for layoffs as a member of URA AFT. The threat of layoffs of staff will harm the functioning of Rutgers, of the School of Arts and Sciences, of the writing program where I work, and most importantly, of our students. My role in the department is primarily scheduling over 50 courses, 600 sections, and over 15,000 students. Scheduling is only one part of the massive work done by the staff of the English department and in SAS. All of us work tirelessly to make students feel safe, secure, and supported in their educational endeavors, especially during this unprecedented time. Without our expertise, students wouldn't know how to navigate the Rutgers system. In fact, I would argue that we are the community of the English department, of SAS, and of Rutgers. I know firsthand about our student experience because I'm an alumni of Rutgers myself, having graduated with a BA in English and a master's in education and elementary education. I used to be supremely proud of this great institution, my alma mater, where I loved working because of our great community. Over the last several years, however, I began to feel disillusioned and disappointed by the way Rutgers treated its staff, who I think of as its backbone, and began to hate a place I once loved. I felt great distance between what I thought we were, a place that supported a community of educators, and those who upheld
that mission to a place that would rather take advantage of its workforce than embrace the ideals it once set out to uphold. But with a new president comes a new hope. Today, President Holloway spoke of a beloved community, and I say that this should include engaging more meaningfully with that community. In fact, the very one that your staff create. He further spoke that building better employee relations and we should build better employee relations and that management should listen to its employees. Again, echoing a mission of community. I implore you to show us a different Rutgers, the one that President Holloway evokes in his own words, and one that can turn me into a proud alumni again. This starts by immediately returning all staff who have been laid off to their positions and by saying that there will be no more layoffs at Rutgers of staff, because you too see the community we build. This will allow your staff to go back to their incredibly influential work, the work that makes your jobs possible without concern for their positions and futures. This action is what will return my confidence in Rutgers. Once again, I thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sperling. Andrew Goldstone, please, Associate Professor of English in the School of Arts and Sciences in New Brunswick. Dr. Goldstone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. Please proceed.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, thank you. I would like to speak to the budget. I would like to ask you to do your utmost to protect and enhance the fundamental academic mission of Rutgers and reconsider the proposed budget. This new budget reduces the estimated operating deficit from June by almost 50%, though I believe it omits significant sources of additional revenues and further savings. But even on the terms of the budget proposed, it is now plain that the June declaration of a fiscal emergency was unwarranted. State support has been fully restored, student enrollments are at levels comparable to last year, and the university's reserves have continued to grow. The university has the resources to safeguard its teaching, research, and service missions. This is an essential moment to show the public that these core missions are your priorities too. More than 1,000 people, including several hundred part-time lecturers, have been laid off since April. Only recently in the School of Arts and Sciences, we've heard about 15 staff positions being eliminated and continuing reductions in the availability of part-time lecturer courses. These aren't superfluous people. These are the people on whom the quality of student education and the quality of research depend. Now's the time to make use of the state's restored support and the basic strength of Rutgers' finances and bring those jobs back. I also urge you to rescind the declaration of fiscal emergency made to the faculty and staff unions in June. The decision to freeze salaries has been intensely demoralizing. The university should honor its contractual promises to the unions. Maintaining these good working conditions is essential to maintaining the integrity of teaching and research at Rutgers. New Jersey is in a state of emergency. It needs Rutgers to be strong. Short-term job and salary cuts might seem like prudence, but they only harm New Jersey in the end by undermining the public benefits the university provides. The university's financial health now allows you to chart another course. End the fiscal emergency, restore the lost jobs, support research and teaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Goldstone. Ms. Bridget Purcell, please, a teaching instructor in anthropology.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. I would also like to address item 11. My name is Bridget Purcell, and I'm a full-time teaching instructor in anthropology at the New Brunswick campus. I'm here today in solidarity with my colleagues, the PTLs in the writing program, and to call out the cruelty of any layoffs in the midst of a pandemic and an economic collapse. As my colleagues have already remarked, there's no good budgetary reason for this. In other words, the problem here is not economic, it's moral and political. We want to believe that Rutgers can be a moral leader at this time of society-wide reckoning with questions of racial and economic justice. President Holloway, you said that all members of our community, and this is a quote, deserve to be recognized and respected for a job well done. We agree. And you specifically mentioned the so-called invisible workers that make this university run. How then can this administration lay off our most economically precarious colleagues, from PTLs to the dining and custodial services workers who were laid off in the spring? I'm asking the board to tell our administration that they have a choice. Either they can champion social justice, or they can lay off our most vulnerable community members. Either they can praise essential workers, or they can treat their own workforce as disposable. They cannot do both. I'll add that keeping PTLs on the payroll is really the floor and not the ceiling of what they deserve. We would like to see these positions converted into full-time jobs that accord respect, job security, and fair compensation. This really is not too much to ask. Finally, we're here because as teaching faculty, we know the value of our work, and it's high time that our salaries and our working conditions reflect that value. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Purcell. Dr. Anna Perret, forgive me if I didn't get that pronunciation correct, Associate Professor of French at the School of Arts and Sciences in New Brunswick. Dr. Perret.
Yes, Anna Perret addressing agenda item 11. As faculty, undergraduate director, and former director of a large interdisciplinary program, I am in full support of everything URA members have shared. A beloved community is not possible when community members live in fear. Efforts in creating a more diverse, inclusive, and equitable community must start where it matters the most, with instructors and staff providing essential services to Rutgers students. Staff members have been on the front lines delivering essential resources to Rutgers students and faculty during a pandemic. They do not deserve to live in fear of losing their jobs and the benefits. Many of the administrative jobs at Rutgers are held by Black, Latina, and Asian women. Staff members are the main breadwinners, are often the main breadwinners and provide health benefits to their families. So this is a human tragedy, and I know you don't want to hear about that today. As a departmental officer and a program director, I can tell you it takes at least 6 months to train a staff person. Staff members serve as liaison with many departments, including scheduling, human resources, accounting, Global Rutgers, the Dean's Office. Their jobs have increasing complexity due to software systems such as Cornerstones and the recently implemented Course Atlas. They truly are the people who make Rutgers run. So in closing, I hope, I assure you that staff cuts and brutal staff reorganizations throw departments, interdisciplinary programs, and entire schools into disarray for extended periods. I hope Rutgers management will reassess priorities and examine all possible options. Yes, before engaging in destructive layoffs that hurt the mission of the university. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Perret. Finally, on number 11, Ms. Marianne McMillan of the wonderful Rutgers Gardens. Ms. McMillan.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe Marianne made it onto the call.
Okay, great. Moving on, please, Amy Heeger, a PTL in Newark.
Mr. Chair, Amy is not on.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Please, Ms. Grace McGarty from the James Dixon Carr Library in New Brunswick.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm addressing agenda item number 11 and pursuing HR actions. I have already received a layoff notice, which was based solely on a budget decision to eliminate lines of library staff. And these are the very staff the university deemed vital to return to campus first during the COVID closure to support the university mission as a premier research institution. Staff are an integral part of the vision of Rutgers as a beloved community. Layoffs of those who work diligently to support research directly contradict the ideal of recentering the academy within the university. I perform the functions of 2 full-time staff jobs as Access Services Resource Sharing Contact and my primary role as student coordinator of 21 federal work-study undergraduates. I took initiative to write detailed procedures that became the prototype used across the library system for low-contact loans and returns of physical books and media during COVID. With just 1 month's notice, student coordinators learned the libraries would be the only employer of work-study students this term, but now only virtually. So I created 90 hours in 1 month's time of high-quality curriculum content and built a new website as our virtual forum, crafting assignment modules with themes that engage and enrich the students academically, personally, and professionally, as I continue to mentor them on these same intangible life skills. These students represent the most socioeconomically vulnerable and underrepresented members of society that Rutgers vows to protect and nurture. They are overwhelmingly students of color. But my layoff will hurt these students. They will lose their trainer, timekeeper, confidant, budget analyst, and sole professional reference for future education and jobs. And the personal impact for me is devastating. I will lose the community, colleagues, and job I love, my livelihood, life insurance, ability to save for retirement, and possibly my home. As a person with a disability, losing health insurance becomes a matter of life and death. I can only afford treatment that manages a condition through the current plan. Consider the spectrum of harm caused by these meritless layoffs. They disregard the value of the individual who exemplify Rutgers' ideal.
Thank you very much. Harnell Richmond, please, of the Project Management Office.
Mr. Chair, that individual is not on.
Thank you very much. Ms. Christine O'Connell, President of the URA AFT.
Good afternoon. My name is Christine O'Connell, and I am the president of URA AFT Local 1766. I speak to you today because we are part of the beloved community that President Holloway refers to. We are the community that serves our students, supports our faculty, and implements a myriad of programs that provide the face to the community of Rutgers in every county of the state of New Jersey. We do research, we advise students, and until recently, fed every student on campus, and so many other things. We are alumni, we are students, and we are proud parents of students. We are the backbone of the beloved community of Rutgers University. But we don't feel so beloved right now. Mass staff layoffs are being implemented in many departments, including Rutgers Gardens, a place of serenity during this time of COVID, and a hub of teaching and volunteering in the community. Rutgers Libraries, where the heart of research begins and is a place of study, resources, and services. And today, in the School of Arts and Sciences, our largest school in New Brunswick. We are some of the most economically vulnerable people across the beloved community who President Holloway acknowledges provide the work that is often overlooked and undervalued. And we as a union reached out to our state legislators to restore funding to the state budget because we knew that by reducing appropriations to Rutgers, it would hurt Rutgers and by extension, all of us. But yet layoffs are still coming and they are catastrophic to our members and their families. So today, I ask you, board members, to reverse this layoff trend, rescind the layoffs already issued to help us continue to grow our beloved community into the exceptional research institution which we are proud to be part of every day. We ask that you influence other decision makers that this is not what Rutgers should represent. They should be a public employer that doesn't choose to hurt the most vulnerable when there are other solutions that management could consider. And we ask that you pledge that job security and healthcare be paramount in your decision-making, and the well-being of people is integral and vital to the success of our university. If we are to aspire to be a beloved community, even if we disagree sometimes.
Dr. David Hughes of the AAUP AFT. Dr. Hughes, sir.
Mr. Chair, 1 second. I am looking for Mr. Hughes. Mr. Chair, I do not see Mr. Hughes on the call.
Thank you very much. Please, Mr. David Winters, member of the University Senate, New Brunswick Faculty Council. Mr. Winters, please.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. President Holloway, welcome to the Board of Governors. I'm glad that you've had the chance to hear a series of very good speakers so far today. I'm happy to follow in their tracks here. Yes, I'm David Winters. I'm the Vice President of the Part-Time Lecturers Union. I'm also a member of the University Senate and the New Brunswick Faculty Council, and I'm speaking to the proposed resolution on the appointment of Prabhas Mogi as EVPAA. So I'd like to take this opportunity to suggest to Mr. Mogi, President Holloway, and the Board of Governors that Rutgers is in urgent need of major structural democratic reforms. The COVID crisis and our top administrative personnel's response to it have made tragically evident the blind spots that are created by the centralized top-down decision-making structure built up by President Barchi. If the current administration wants to demonstrate a commitment to collaboration and community, that's possible. But all of the hiring freezes and layoffs need to be rescinded. Courses removed from the schedule need to be restored. Course caps need to be reduced. And
Mr. Winters,
need to be given full-time.
Mr. Winters, forgive
Yes.
me, please. You are meant to be speaking to the nomination of Dr. Mogi.
Yes.
If you want to speak to it sounds to me like you'd be better off in a different forum.
If you'll allow me to continue, you'll see that this is the right agenda item for me to be speaking to. I appreciate it.
Use it carefully. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. The strategic plan developed before President Holloway arrived needs to be tossed out, and a new planning process involving the entire Rutgers community from beginning to end needs to begin immediately. It's inappropriate and ineffective for a half dozen or so administrative personnel to plan Rutgers' future on their own. It doesn't matter who those half dozen people are or how incredible they may be. Faculty, students, staff, essential workers, and community leaders working together to guide Rutgers into its future. That's Rutgers. We're Rutgers, and frankly, we don't need an Office of Strategy devising effective ways to tell us we're beloved while it's also devising effective
Mr. Winters, I'm
ways to
sorry.
So if we're going to be a beloved community, we must certainly first be a democratic community where co-governing.
I couldn't have been more clear about what the rules are today. Kim, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you. Please, Ms. Cecile De Laurentiis, an alumna of Blaustein.
One moment, Mr. Chair. I am checking. Cecile is not on, sir.
Thank you very much. Ms. Karen Thompson, a PTL in New Brunswick, on the subject of Dr. Mogi's appointment, please.
Hi, this is Karen. I'm speaking on all the administrative appointments that you're voting on today, and I'm objecting to these, actually. I hope you'll vote against appointing them. My name is, and I'm going to give you my concerns. My name is Karen Thompson. Some of you may be familiar with me. I'm also a senator. I'm also on the faculty council. I've been teaching part-time at Rutgers for over 40 years, yet I recently found myself among those targeted for layoffs. Layoff isn't quite the right word, since part-time lecturers, or PTLs as we're called, are supposedly hired and rehired each semester. That means I've been hired and rehired 80-some times. Laying off PTLs saves very little money, and no one could even try to say cutting PTLs is cost savings. One top administrator's salary could account for 20 PTLs. Evidently, after years of increasing the use of PTLs for teaching, now over a third of courses at Rutgers, the administration is finally interested in reducing PTLs to protect RU's reputation. Rutgers leads the Big Ten in use, or rather abuse, of PTLs and adjuncts. When dozens of PTLs in the New Brunswick writing program, including me, were notified recently they would not be teaching next semester, There was widespread outrage among students and full-time faculty as well as PTLs. The plan was changed, and some of us got reassurance we would be back next term. But what about the rest of the PTLs who won't be? What about the students who won't have course offerings they expect and deserve? And what about the librarians who are being laid off next month? At least one of them, I heard, is close to retirement, saddled with a disability, and set to lose health coverage. PTLs, as you know, receive no health coverage, even during a pandemic. Why are the most vulnerable employees being cut, even when Rutgers is well fixed financially, when state funding has recently been restored, when coaches continue to be paid long after they've stopped working, and when increasing numbers of high-paid administrators remain complacently safe from layoff? Rutgers worries about its reputation without understanding that treating students and unemployed. Oh, wow, I thought I timed this. I'm so sorry.
No apologies in order. And to be clear, you're speaking not to the appointments, but you're actually speaking to the budget, which is fine. Take another 10 seconds.
And by saying, other people have said this. President Holloway has mentioned invisible employees who should be more recognized. Are PTLs among them? He says he's interested in making Rutgers a place people want to work.
That's the 10 seconds. Thank you. Thank you for your 40 years, and thank you for your remarks.
Thank you. Thank you for thanking me.
Okay.
Could I ask if President Holloway wants to respond to any of these things?
Who is speaking, please?
I'm sorry, this is Troy Shinbrat, and I just wanted to know if President Holloway would like
well,
to
Mr.
respond.
Shinbrat, you are out of order, sir, because there are no responses to these remarks. This is not a question and answer session.
I understand, but President...
These are remarks. You are out of order. Moving along. Sue-Ann Fedorov, please. Ms. Sue-Ann Fedorov of the writing program in New Brunswick, speaking to the appointments, please.
One moment, Mr. Chair. I am searching for her. Mr. Chair, I do not see that individual.
Thank you. Dr. Joshua Fessy, forgive me if I mispronounced that, Associate Professor in the School of Arts and Sciences, the English Writing Program in New Brunswick.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you clearly. Please proceed.
Okay, I'm speaking to agenda item 11, and I'm currently designated a PTL 1. I've heard that hiring next semester will prioritize seniority in hiring, and I wanted to provide the perspective of a PTL 1 who may well not be hired next spring because I'm not considered senior. However, even PTL 1s have years of valuable experience and dedication to Rutgers. We're not just contract workers. Earlier in the meeting, the faculty of Rutgers was praised for being on the front lines with students during the onset of the pandemic. And many of those faculty members...
Mr. Fessy, forgive me, are you speaking to the budget?
Yes, that is what I requested to speak to.
Okay, please proceed in speaking to the budget.
Sure. Please do not lay off PTL workers. I am a PTL 1, but I've been teaching since 2007 as a TA, and then since 2011. So for the past 9 years, I've worked as a PTL. It's not 40 years, but it's certainly not nothing. And I not only look to Rutgers for my livelihood, I'm invested in Rutgers' student body. I love teaching expository writing and have for more than a decade. So why would Rutgers lay off people so dedicated to the university? I ask that any decision that is made will take into account that PTLs, even PTL 1s, are not just transactional workers to be dispensed with summarily. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Heather Pierce, please, a PTL in the Department of Political Science.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to the hiring freeze in the budget, please. May I continue?
You may. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chairman Engelson, governors, President Holloway, I thank you for the opportunity to address you here today. My name is Heather Pierce, and I'm a PTL in the Department of Political Science in New Brunswick and a member of the Executive Board of the PTL Union. I'm here today to speak to for my PTL colleagues and for our students. My message is simple. By laying off adjunct faculty, you are harming our students. Like many PTLs, I have a PhD, I've published research in top peer-reviewed journals in my field, and most importantly, I've dedicated my life to gaining the skills and experience necessary to be a good educator. I am no less qualified than our full-time research faculty to teach at this institution, and yet I'm treated as second class. PTLs are the teaching faculty of Rutgers. We are top-notch teaching specialists, and we deserve to be treated as such. There's a robust literature and education research demonstrating the inverse relationship between class size and quality of education, which is even stronger for online learning. By cutting 25% of PTL courses this fall and funneling students into fewer, larger classes, you have already diminished the quality of the Rutgers education. These recent cuts only serve to reinforce this harm. We know this isn't really about the budget, and while I support the de-adjunctification of academia, this is not the way to do it. By treating PTLs as disposable, you are signaling to our students that you do not care about the quality of their education. The fact that PTLs are undervalued, underpaid, without health insurance or job security tells our students that you, as an employer, don't even value the very education you are charging them tens of thousands of dollars for every year. If you did, you would compensate PTLs fairly for their own educational experiences. If you are unwilling to pay a fair price for the product you are selling, why should anyone else? What message do you think this sends to our students? Our students deserve better. I call on you to do what is right for them and for the reputation of Rutgers. Reverse the recent layoffs, rescind the hiring freeze as it relates to PTLs, and restore the courses that have already been cut, and start treating PTLs with the respect that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. David Letwin, please, a PTL at Mason Gross.
Can you hear me?
We can, Mr. Letwin, please proceed.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Rutgers Board of Governors. My name is David Letwin, and I'm going to speak on the budget proposal with regard to hiring freezes and layoffs, building on what others have said. I've been teaching at Rutgers since the fall of 2003, and I'm here today as a part-time lecturer and member of the executive board of our union, AAUP AFT Local 6324, to stand with all PTLs in the fight to save our jobs. When President Holloway spoke at the PTL virtual town hall in July, he explicitly said he opposed what he called the adjunctification of Rutgers. But the answer to low-paying adjunct jobs with no security and few benefits is not to fire or lay off PTLs, as Heather said, the teaching faculty of this university, and to cut their courses, but to transform all PTL appointments into full-time positions for those that want them. And PTLs aren't the only one in this situation. Other vulnerable Rutgers employees, many of color, have already lost their jobs or are facing layoffs with the same cruel disregard for the suffering inflicted. All this while huge salaries are siphoned off to coaches and an ever-growing strata of high-level bureaucrats. As the teaching faculty of Rutgers, we will not stand by and watch a public university be undermined on the pretext of an alleged fiscal emergency. We are here to say that PTLs and other Rutgers workers, our students, particularly those from poor communities and communities of color, and quality public higher education are not disposable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Lauren Fedorko, please, a PTL in the English Writing Program.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, please proceed.
Okay, great. I'm speaking to hiring freezes and the budget. Cutting PTLs and lessening courses from the writing program is a detriment to our university. I still remember the words of my writing program professor, Lou Foligno, from 2006. He told me, writing will take you where you need to be. There is a power in writing well that you can't find in other subjects. Now I too teach in the writing program. Students learn exponentially in all of our classrooms. They gain confidence by being brave enough to take risks in their writing. They practice and master the use of rhetorical devices to enhance their persuasion. And they research and synthesize text to build thoughtful, ethos-based arguments. students. This is a multifaceted and delicate process. It requires a community where we know their names and their abilities, but more importantly, it requires that we know how to help them and can work with them on an individual basis. And we do. I am so proud of my students. Some of them are writing their first 20-page research papers. Some of them are getting their papers published in the undergraduate research writing conference. All of them become deeper thinkers and more analytic writers. And isn't this what we want? I know the doctors, lawyers, business managers, and accountants I have taught look back on this class as a stepping stone to their success. I know because they've told me. Writing is interdisciplinary. It fosters the success in any field. I think back to the words of my beloved professor, and I know I'm right where I belong, at the helm of the writing classroom. It's where all of my colleagues belong because we make an impact and we would do anything for our students. And I need you to know that PTLs are the core of the university, and I beg you to reconsider your decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, Mr. Daniel Sidoric, a PTL in the School of Management and Labor Relations.
Thank you. I am a PTL since 2008 in the School of Management and Labor Relations. And I would like to speak today on the budget proposal with regard to hiring freezes and layoffs and how that will impact Rutgers' core mission. The people who keep the university running, from the PTLs to the dining workers, continue to suffer under decisions which treat us as disposable. PTLs have put tremendous effort into converting courses to an online format with no additional compensation and a job with low pay and no benefits. The reward Rutgers has given us is repeated waves of layoffs, the latest in the writing program. We are treated as third-class citizens, but we refuse to accept that. All PTLs in the writing program must be employed if Rutgers is to continue teaching this core competence to its students. But not only do we need our experienced teachers, we also need realistic class sizes, especially in this period of pandemic and especially for writing intensive courses. One of my courses has had its cap raised by 20%, and the same has happened to many others. How will larger class sizes enhance Rutgers' reputation? In another critical area, we will be asked to return to campus in this dangerous time, though we have no health insurance. With enrollment stable and state funding restored, there is no excuse for the university to find millions for a notorious anti-union law firm and for athletic coaches, but so far has failed to fund the teachers at the center of its core mission. We expect to be treated with the same dignity that you expect to be treated with. We will accept nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swerdlow. Apologies. Thank you, Mr. Sidoric. Mr. Howard Swerdloff, please, of the AAUP-AFT.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
I'm speaking regarding item 19B, the appointment of Prabhas Moji as Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs. I'm a New Brunswick writing instructor and an executive board member of the Part-Time Lecturers Union. Dr. Moji either initiated or acquiesced in a thoughtless and callous decision that harmed this university, its students and teachers. After 9 years of service with consistently flawless evaluations, 2 weeks ago, I was summarily dismissed, along with dozens of my New Brunswick Writing Program PTL colleagues. What kind of leader makes decisions like this? One who sees teachers and students as data points on a spreadsheet? A smart leader would understand that we PTLs are Rutgers teaching faculty, not some variable costs. Let me provide just one example of the value we actually provide. I want to put a human face on what President Holloway terms academic excellence, as many of the other speakers today have done. This email arrived this very morning from a student of mine in English 201, a former student of mine, one of the programs that would have been decimated as a result of these layoffs. Hello, Professor Swerdloff. I am so sorry to hear about this. And when I received the news, I was truly upset by it because you were honestly one of my favorite professors throughout my undergraduate career. During the research and disciplines course I took with you, you taught me so many strategies to write a well thought out, well organized research paper. And I took those strategies with me. I still find myself using them 3 years post-graduation. And now in my graduate career, whenever I have assignments, I frequently reference notes from your class. If you were removed from the writing program, it would be truly detrimental to future students. It's really quite hard to get students excited and passionate about writing a 15 to 20 page research paper, but you were able to do that. And I think that's special and very valuable for a university. I'm sure the same holds true for your colleagues, and I am hoping that Rutgers reconsiders this decision. Unfortunately, I will not be able to speak on behalf of you or your other colleagues that are affected by this ridiculous decision. If you are speaking during the meeting, please feel free to read the board what I wrote in this email. If I was available to speak, I absolutely would. Best, Melody. I have many other messages from students. I'm finishing up.
We're over
Sir,
the 2-minute limit.
I'm finishing up. Let me finish, please.
You have 10
It's
seconds.
time. It's valuable. I only have a few seconds left. Thank you. It's past time to treat us as valuable professionals instead of hyper-exploitable, disposable units of labor.
Okay,
President Holloway.
So, Mr. Cradival, sir, 2 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed.
Great. Good afternoon, members of the board. Charles Cradaville. I'm the editor of New Brunswick Today. I'm also the leader of the 5th and 6th Ward Neighborhood Association, and I'm here to speak to you about the RWJ Barnabas affiliation agreement on your agenda. But first, I do want to say congratulations to the new board members. I am a proud alumnus here, and one reason I'm proud is of our new president, and I got to meet him yesterday and wished him nothing but the best. In some ways, I hope that he will build on the work of the prior administration, but in other ways, I think that he needs to correct mistakes that were made by the prior administration. And one of those things that I think needs to be corrected is the relationship with RWJ Barnabas. They're working currently with a developer to sully the name of Rutgers by engaging in a scheme to close and destroy a public school and to expand their campus just a couple blocks away from Old Queens. This is a public school that opened just 4 years ago at a significant expense to New Brunswick taxpayers. It's the first school in our district to be designated future ready, and solar panels were just installed over about a year ago, even though a deal had already been cut behind the scenes to close the school with no community involvement. And I think it's worth noting that there's no clear timeline on when a replacement school might open, so that once students do return to physical school buildings, unless
Mr. Cradival, I'm going to ask you to stay on point with something on which we're about to vote, and we're not about to vote on what you're talking about. So I would ask you to direct your remarks to what we're about to vote on. Please continue.
Certainly. I asked for a copy of the affiliation agreement. I did not get it, so I don't know what exactly is in it. But if this is in it, don't vote for it. And I would just humbly and respectfully ask President Holloway to please agree to meet with the affected communities before making a final decision on this. There were a number of people came to this board's meeting on February 18th, and I'll follow up with his chief of staff. And I do respectfully and humbly ask him to take that meeting and meet with those folks to hear how much is at stake with this particular issue. And I thank you for your time. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Cradival. Thank you very much. Mr. Banks has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And anybody wish to speak on Mr. Banks' motion? Any objections to Mr. Banks' motion? Any abstentions? Unanimously passed. May I have a motion on the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Anybody wish to speak to the consent agenda? Any objections to the consent agenda? Abstentions? Passed. Any old business? Any new business? Does any member of the board wish to speak on any topic at all? Does any member of the administration wish to speak on any topic at all?
I would like to hear if the new president has any comments based on all of the things that we have heard.
I thank you for that. You are again out of order. You and I should speak offline. I know this is your first meeting, and I know you're not intending to be disrespectful to anybody. So let's catch up tomorrow or the next day, please. Please, may I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Thank you. We are adjourned. God bless. Be well, everybody.